Exclusive contract novel from Feilu Novel Network. Pirates. I resurrected Roger. Through living in the world of pirates, I can resurrect the dead and obtain one of their abilities. It's said that pirates never die. I want to see which unlucky guy besides Roger has been written dead. Lufei said, "My brother is dead. When it comes to playing, I never won a game against him when I was a child." Sauron. My girlfriend is dead, and in terms of playing, I never won a game against her when I was a child. Sanji. Do you still have a girlfriend? Ah, my mother died of illness. Usop. My mother also died of illness. Nami. It's great to die of illness. My mother was killed. Robin. It's okay, my mom was also killed. Everyone. White beard. Zefa, I didn't expect you to die. I was killed by your disciple, and my son repaired his sword. Who killed you? Zefa. I was killed by my disciple. Let's go seek revenge together. White beard. Sure, but let's have a fight first. The most chaotic family recognition in the world of Pirates Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. 001 I resurrected the Pirate King Roger. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. East China Sea. Rog Town. The streets are bustling with people, and there are numerous shops. Indeed, after the end of the war, although the New World became increasingly chaotic, the situation in the first half of this great waterway has stabilized quite a bit. A young man in his 20s walked briskly on the streets of Log Town, curiously looking around at everything. His figure was covered by a large black coat, and his hood covered his face, revealing only a sharp diamond-edged profile. He had an ordinary long sword hanging around his waist. I traveled too late and missed many events. In the slanting sunlight, the profile under the hood is reflected, and a confident smile gradually appears at the corner of the mouth. That is a confidence that comes from the very essence. His name is Lu Feng and he is a traveler. As the sun sets in the west, dusk falls. Lu Feng came to a huge execution stand. Like countless tourists from all over the world, he slowly lifted his head and looked up in front of this execution platform, which holds a special significance to this sea. Compared to the towering skyscrapers that surrounded the world before crossing, this execution platform, which is only about 10 meters high, is nothing. But it is precisely the few seconds that occurred on this execution platform that greatly changed the history of this world. The man who died with a smile, in just a few words, ushered in a brand new era and ignited the wave of the age of pirates. Lu Feng slowly raised his hand and took off his hood, revealing a handsome face. Eyes bright and lively, sword eyebrows starry. Roger, have you seen it? This is the era you created. His mouth slowly cracked with a mocking curve, and his tone was full of sarcasm and disdain. Unfortunately, the era you have created with your own hands has completely exploded, and all directions are out of your control. Lu Feng's eerie self-talk standing in front of the execution platform gradually caught the attention of the people in the surrounding Luoga town. Roger's execution platform has always been the most prone place for accidents in Log Town, especially for the ambitious pirates who want to go out to sea to search for a great treasure, and they are full of destructive desire for this execution platform. The brutality and wildness of pirates cannot be tamed, and reputation is a measure of strength and a target of success for them. The crowd of onlookers is increasing, and even many murderous guys have appeared. You don't even need to look, those are pirates hidden among the people of Log Town. In just a few minutes, neat steps sounded from the far end of the street, and a blue and white tide quickly surrounded the execution platform. The navy stationed in Log Town has also arrived. Little devil. What are you doing there? No one is allowed to come into contact with the execution platform. A deep roar echoed through the navy crowd. Hundreds of naval officers automatically separated like a tide, and an officer dressed in a colonel's cloak of justice walked out. "I am Colonel Dawes from the base in Logue Town, and now I order you to leave the execution platform." Since the Straw Hat Boy Luffy and the Clown Bucky caused a commotion on the execution platform in Logue Town more than half a year ago, Roger's execution platform has received more serious monitoring and protection from the Navy. This execution platform is seen by the Navy and world governments as a victory of justice and an end to the evil life of Pirate King Roger, symbolizing great significance. Lu Feng ignored it and shook his head. He ignored the roar and orders of the naval colonel and just said something to himself. "The person who knows all the truth and secrets. Let me see what kind of existence you will be in this new era's storm. Is it the remnants of the old era that Whitebeard talks about?" Still. He didn't finish speaking, just gave a cold smile. Then quickly take a few steps over the railing and climb directly onto the execution platform. "What is he doing? Are you looking for death, little devil?" The crowd below exploded with flowers. The navies have raised their guns under the command of their superiors. A killer appears. But Lu Feng, who stepped on the execution platform with one foot, remained indifferent. A stiff and cold voice suddenly rang out in my mind. "Has the character dead.Roger been resurrected after successfully signing in to Roger the Pirate King's execution stand in Logue Town?" "Yes/no." Without hesitation, Lu Feng replied. "Resurrect." The next moment, a grand, distant, and heroic laughter gradually echoed around the entire execution platform, and even the entire town of Logue. "Do you want my treasure? If you want it, I can give it all to you. Go find it. I'll put all the treasures there." Everyone's faces changed drastically. The Navy's faces turned pale and unbelievable. This voice that seems to only exist in historical images but is no longer familiar. Absolutely not wrong. Then they can no longer see everything in front of them. Endless white light rises from the execution platform. A majestic figure became clear in the hazy and dazzling light. That's Pirate King dead.Roger. The new book seeks all support, and the intersection of characters from the old and new eras is absolutely beautiful. 002 Roger, the ocean without you is too boring. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The light is noisy, as if to block the sky and sun. Amidst the radiance, Lu Feng on the execution platform gazed at the figure gradually becoming clearer beside him, with a smile on his lips. This is his system capability. This system is capable of resurrecting a deceased character at the place of their death and obtaining a certain ability from that character. Lu Feng was envious of the abilities mentioned in various rumors about the Pirate King Roger, regardless of which one he possessed. The armed aura of the flowing Sakura level, the majestic and boundless aura of the king, the sight and hearing aura of the sound of all things level, and the unpredictable swordsmanship. Congratulations on successfully reviving the legendary character dead.Roger. We are randomly selecting the character's abilities. Character ability extraction successful. Congratulations on successfully acquiring the swordsmanship ability of the character dead.Roger and mastering the essence of swordsmanship, divine avoidance. Divine avoidance. Use the sword to quickly swing a flying and slashing attack with a winding and domineering aura on the target. The attack will avoid the opponent's weapon and directly hit the body. As the system prompt slowly fell, Lu Feng could clearly feel an unprecedented powerful force rushing fiercely into his body, surging and howling in every muscle and blood vessel. A fierce wind was surging and rushing towards us. At the same time, countless images, like dusty memories, suddenly knocked on the door and flickered alternately in his mind. The figures wielding long swords and fighting with blood were vividly visible in the depths of his mind, imprinted in the deepest part of his soul. That belongs to the swordsmanship cultivation and fighting memory of the Pirate King Roger. In half a minute, the dazzling white light gradually faded away. The scene above the execution platform also slowly caught everyone's eye. A brief silence, as quiet as a needle falling. Even Lu Feng could hear the panicked hearts of those around the execution platform beating wildly, their breathing almost suffocating. He knows that this is because his physique has been enhanced, and his hearing has been greatly enhanced. Hiss. With the sound of someone gasping for air, endless screams and noise appeared. The entire execution platform square exploded in an instant. That's Roger the Pirate King. That man actually resurrected the Pirate King Roger. How could this be? Not only the onlookers and pirates, but also the Navy members who had originally raised their guns to shoot at Lu Feng took a pale step back, their hands shaking uncontrollably. Roger the Pirate King, that's the legendary pirate who holds power, reputation, and wealth. That's the man who once defeated the Golden Lion and the White-Beard Edward Newgate in the sky. That is considered an extremely dangerous enemy by both the Navy and the world government, with a bounty of 5.564.8 billion belly as a legendary figure. The man who died on the execution stand many years ago and was publicly executed by the Navy unexpectedly returned to this world. How could this be possible? Just as everyone was terrified and shocked beyond measure, Roger, whose figure had become clear, suddenly spoke up. He was still wearing the red captain's cloak, with golden shoulder flowers fluttering freely in the gentle breeze under the setting sun, and a knife and a pistol pinned to his waist. This is... where? His voice was very hoarse, with a hint of weakness. Roger slowly lifted his head and looked around from a high position, ignoring the hundreds of Navy soldiers with live ammunition below. And when he saw the execution platform and Logtown Square beneath him, a touch of nostalgia flashed deep in his eyes, then disappeared. Is Logtown? I didn't expect to come back to this place. Little ghost. Roger turned around and looked at Lu Feng with a smile on his lips in front of him. He asked in a deep voice. Did you resurrect me? Lu Feng shrugged his shoulders and said with a faint smile. That's right. Roger frowned and remained silent for a moment before continuing. I am already a dead person. My will has been passed down. Although I don't know what kind of strange ability you have to resurrect the dead, this sea already has its destination and direction. Why do you need it? Lu Feng squinted his eyes. The cold sea breeze rushed towards me, as if it was about to tear me apart. The strong wind blew the black cloak behind him recklessly, causing it to flutter and fall. He stared intently at the legendary man in front of him, the great pirate whom countless people admired and despised, and suddenly smiled. Because I came to this sea. And without you, this sea would be incredibly boring. Once this statement is made. On the entire square, everyone was in a state of shock and astonishment. That young man is actually provoking the Pirate King Roger. The world is quiet now. Only the wind howled, as if iron blood was roaring in the vastness. Roger stared blankly at the young face in front of him. Suddenly, he felt a familiar connection from the depths of his soul in the latter. His expression suddenly flashed with shock. I see. You don't even care about inheritance. You just want to conquer. Lu Feng laughed wildly. I'm here, I conquer. The things you couldn't do. The things you didn't dare to do. Let me do it. The moment the words fall. Lu Feng forcefully drew out his long sword from his waist. The sword body is ordinary and ordinary. The sound of the sword hummed like the roar of a dragon. Swinging a sword. The dragon sword aura roared across the square. Ground fissure. The crack stretches for kilometers. One sword. The realm of the great sword hero. Seeking flowers and collecting them. 003 Roger resurrected, shocked Navy headquarters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. New world. New Navy headquarters. The top war destroyed most of the original naval headquarters, Marinfando, and could no longer sustain operations. After the battle for the position of Marshal, the newly appointed Navy Marshal Sikorsky, who defeated the Green Pheasant, relocated the Navy headquarters to the New World G.1 branch to demonstrate his determination to fight against the New World pirates. The headquarters of the new Navy imitated the military configuration of Marin Fando and established a huge oval-shaped military port as a defensive barrier. Countless military forts and fortresses stand among them, and the surrounding waters are surrounded by countless warships cruising back and forth, swallowing everything like giant beasts. The highest military conference room. A group of senior naval officers led by Red Dog have taken their seats, and as the messenger presents a classified intelligence document in front of everyone, everyone falls into a strange silence. The atmosphere was cold and solemn, as if it was even more piercing than the sea breeze outside the window, making people shiver. I believe you have all read this intelligence document, have you? The newly appointed Marshal of the Navy, Red Dog, sat on the main seat like a silent volcano, holding a burning cigar in his gloved right hand. The brim of the military cap covered his gaze, and the shadow that shone through made it difficult to see his expression clearly. But his stern tone already indicated the unease of the new naval leader. No one spoke up. No one dares to speak up. Whether it's as the retired Marshal of the Warring States period, or the new General Fujiwara, who was selected through world conscription and possesses monster-level strength, with a smile, both frown and remain silent. After all, the news in front of me is too terrifying to ponder deeply. If this intelligence is true, the man has really returned to this vast sea, and no one knows how much controversy it will cause. Is this intelligence true? Finally, someone spoke up. It is the Naval Chief Inspector of the Warring States period sitting in the sidelines. Originally, he had already stepped down from his position as Marshal and had no command or command power over the Navy, so he had relatively no say in this matter. But this intelligence is indeed significant, and the man is still his old rival, so he can't sit still. Chief Crane said with a heavy expression. This is the intelligence personally transmitted by Colonel Dawes from the naval base in Logue Town. He is an outstanding graduate of the military academy, otherwise he wouldn't have been appointed as the important position of Logue Town base commander. With his military literacy, there shouldn't be any mistakes. That man has returned. Speaking of the last sentence, even a person like Chief Crane, who has experienced countless storms, couldn't help but swallow his saliva, feeling his throat dry. Roger, everyone present is a senior member of the Navy. Naturally, it is clear that what happened back then was far from being as simple as political propaganda. That man was not arrested by the Navy at all, but surrendered himself to the Navy. In that era, the Navy exhausted an unknown amount of manpower and material resources, and even with the deployment of generals such as Kappa Warring States and Zefa, they were unable to arrest Roger and his pirate group. And now Roger has come back to life again. The most terrifying thing is that the Navy has just experienced a top war, engaging in a major battle with the Whitebeard pirates, a powerful force of the Four Emperors in the New World. Although they narrowly won, the loss of justice is incalculable. With the current power of the Navy and the presence of the Four Emperors of the New World, the situation is not optimistic with the addition of Roger. This is what causes the most headaches and anxieties for many naval executives. This old guy is dead, why do he have to come back? Kapu frowned on the side and said. The Warring States period shook its head and said. Just being a Roger is not scary. What I am most afraid of now is that those guys hidden in the darkness may start a war again under the name of One Piece. His eyebrows twisted into a Sichuan character, and his graying hair appeared particularly old. Teng Hu slowly said. If I remember correctly, Roger's deputy, Raleigh, the Hades King, is still alive. This cold sentence almost made everyone present burst into a cold sweat. Yeah. According to the confidential intelligence collected by the Navy and government, Roger voluntarily disbanded the pirate group back then. However, over the years, the underworld king Raleigh has been living in seclusion in the Shambhodri Islands. 2 years ago, he fought against the great general, the Yellow Ape, and his strength remains extremely strong. This is just the tip of the iceberg for the once powerful Roger pirates. If Roger were to cheer up again at this moment and the news spread, the Roger pirates, who had stirred the world upside down, would be resurrected again. That would be the biggest threat to the Navy and the world government. It goes without saying that the current King's 7 Marshal Sea Joker Bucky, as well as one of the 4 emperors, red-haired Shanks, were once crew members on Roger's ship. With the current strength of the Navy, it is no longer sufficient to fight against the 4 emperors of the New World. If the Roger pirates were to revive again, the situation would be unimaginable. Compared to these, what I care more about is the little ghost named Lu Feng. At this moment, Red Dog suddenly spoke up. He gritted his teeth tightly and his face was gloomy. One hand forcefully extinguished the cigar, and the back of the hand was covered with bulging veins. Roger may just be the first one, if he still has the ability to resurrect other dead people. The words haven't fallen yet. All the senior naval officers were trembling all over. Names that should have been buried one by one, names that resemble evil spirits, names that symbolize war and blood gradually flooding into their minds, uncontrollable. 00 for the shadow of the old era, the resurrection of rocks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The history of this sea is really too ancient. Although since Roger began the era of the great pirates, the number of new pirates going out to sea from all over the world has been continuously increasing, showing an exponential and terrifying growth. But for these righteous figures present here, these so-called pirate rookies, even those so-called supernovae with a bounty of over 100 million, are just a group of inexperienced yellow-haired little ghosts. No matter how many there are, they are just a group of ants who cannot enter the eyes of the law. In this vast sea, what is truly terrifying are those notorious and heinous legends. Especially that name. Thinking of that taboo name, everyone in the highest military conference room felt a chill from the bottom of their feet, and then rushed all the way down their spine to the top of their heads. Each of them instinctively looked towards Kapu on the side. What are you watching me do? My task has been completed, and now is the time for your younger generation to take responsibility. Kapu said with a stern and indifferent demeanor, holding himself high. Everyone was speechless, but they dared not say anything. Especially during the Warring States period, my heart was filled with bitterness. At the top of the war, although the Navy won the final victory and defended justice. But the Warring States period was deeply aware that the Navy had chilled Kapu's heart. This old guy who is at the same time as himself has the strength to the ceiling of this sea, but can only watch his grandson be killed in front of him. The so-called hero title praised by thousands of people, with the word justice behind it, pressed him hard to breathe. Internal and external difficulties. The Warring States period shook its head secretly. The top war suffered severe losses. There was a naval infighting, and the 2 generals fought fiercely for the position of marshal, ultimately leading to the departure of the Green Pheasant. Former General and Military Academy instructor Zefa was killed by the Yellow Ape in the New World, and the word justice was almost discredited. Ambitious Blackbeard swallowed up Whitebeard's inheritance and became the new 4th Emperor. In addition, with the latest battle report from Punkhas Sad, the Straw Hat Pirates, who caused a stir in the headquarters 2 years ago, publicly declared war on King 7 Marshal Sea Duo Flamenco, with a faint trend of challenging the 4th Emperor Kaido. The 4th Emperor Big Mom pirates are planning a marriage alliance with the strongest military country in the North Sea, Germa 66, and the struggle for New World hegemony is inevitable. In this dangerous situation, there was also Lu Feng who came out to stir up trouble and resurrect the dead Roger. Although the Navy has received the addition of Green Bull and Vine Tiger, filling the gap in high-end combat power, it is still struggling. In case the group of guys from the Valley of Gods reappeared once again, I dare not continue to think about it during the Warring States period. Regarding Lu Feng, besides what we know within our naval system, what intelligence does the government have? He asked anxiously. Red Dog lit a cigar again and hoarsely said. These days have passed, and the CP department has not found any intelligence about that Lu Feng. It's like this person never existed on this sea. His thick fingers gently tilted against the table. Based on current intelligence, we only know that he resurrected Roger, and we are not sure if he still has the ability to resurrect others. In terms of combat power, this guy easily cut off the execution platform square in Rog Town in half with a single sword, with sword marks stretching for thousands of kilometers. Speaking of which, Red Dog did not continue. The smoke from the cigar once again hazed his face. The great sword hero. The Tinghu beside him frowned and murmured with a smile. On the other side of the conference table, the alternate General Tao Ziyuan couldn't help but grip the famous knife in his hand. These two are both skilled swordsmen in the naval system, so they naturally know what it means to break through waves with just one blow. The realm of the great sword hero. The highest realm pursued by countless swordsmen in this vast sea. This guy named Lu Feng has the eerie ability to resurrect the dead, yet he himself is still a great swordsman. This threat is self-evident. Where is the destination? Where did Lu Feng and Roger go after leaving Rog Town? At this moment, Chief Crane seemed to remember something and asked. The deputy of Red Dog slowly said. They seized a naval warship, and the stationed navy in Log Town attempted to launch a pursuit, but were all intercepted. We have lost their whereabouts. At this moment, the yellow ape, who had been holding its ears and not speaking, suddenly grinned and said. What you're saying is really scary. Should I go and see it myself? Pirate King Roger, it's been a long time since we last fought. Red Dog said coldly. Polyasolino, haven't we enough of the lessons we learned back then? The yellow ape hesitated upon hearing the words and its eyelids twitched. Back then, the two of them still had a green pheasant. They once followed General Cap to eliminate the Roger pirates, but I don't know how much they suffered. Red Dog ignored the yellow ape and waved his hand, simply giving orders. Lu Feng and Roger, we can let go for a moment. The political situation of de Reyes and Rosa is becoming increasingly chaotic. Smile, you can take a trip. Tenghu nodded and said. No problem. Red Dog continued. As for Roger and Lu Feng, since they have already set sail, their destination is very clear. People like them won't waste time in the East China Sea and amusement parks. Upon hearing these words, everyone's eyes lit up. The Warring States period secretly nodded. Although Sakaski has a tough personality, his military literacy and commanding ability are indeed understandable. Lu Feng and Roger will definitely go to the New World. The sea area known as the Pirate Cemetery is the stage for the fierce competition among the heroes. Send a reward order, all branches of the New World should be vigilant. Everyone, everything is for justice. The Red Dog punched heavily on the conference table in front of him. The killing machine is boiling. New book seeks all support, update rules. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 5 daily updates during the new book period. 1000 favorites plus 1 update, 5 tips and 1 watch. The new book is not easy, I hope everyone can support me. Shameless, seek a wave of collectibles. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. What are you crying about? Isn't it just that your son died? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Your swordsmanship. On the vast sea, Roger looked at Lu Feng, who was enjoying the sea breeze blowing on the bow of the ship, and asked. His expression was mixed with doubt and confusion. The cool sea breeze messed up Lu Feng's hair, and under his messy hair, his eyes narrowed into 2 narrow slits. He smiled and simply said. It's your swordsmanship. Now Roger became even more confused. My swordsmanship has never been taught to anyone, except for Raleigh, who has learned a little from me. It has not been passed down at all. Lu Feng stood up from the deck with a smile and stretched lazily. Let me tell you this, it's one of my abilities. After resurrecting you, I can acquire one of your abilities. Roger's eyes widened instantly. How could this be? He couldn't help but be surprised. If he were to resurrect the dead, he could barely understand it as Lu Feng's demonic fruit ability. After all, the eerie abilities of the demon fruits on this vast sea are endless. Even the pirate king who has traveled the entire new world has not been able to fully understand. It was the first time he had seen the demonic fruit that could obtain the abilities of others. Lu Feng chuckled inwardly when he saw Roger's ghostly expression. The golden finger of this system bug is still not easy to accept. However, Roger suddenly raised his eyebrows and said with ill intentions. Aren't you afraid that I'll reveal your secret when you tell me so? Although in my perception, I cannot take action against you, I still have complete autonomy and control. You know, I'm not someone who is willing to accept others. With my status and reputation, I can easily form a pirate group to gallop across the sea. Lu Feng chuckled and said. I don't have much control over you. However, you need to know some things. You probably haven't recovered your strength yet, so you may not be my opponent. And this sea is no longer your era. Now it's 1522 according to the Haiyuan calendar, which means. Roger stood still. It has been 22 years now. He suddenly jumped up and tightly grasped Lu Feng's shoulder with both hands, his expression resembling that of a madman. Do you know a person named Ace? If anyone saw Roger's appearance here, they would probably be surprised. Roger now, there is no other pirate king's domineering, majestic aura, just an ordinary person who worries to the extreme. Seeing his appearance, Lu Feng let out a deep sigh in his heart. Poor parents in the world, even a hero like Roger cannot withstand the connection of blood. He had no doubt at all, just quietly lit a cigarette and handed Roger one. Your son, Portaka's Ace, has passed away. Pop. The burning cigarette fell to the ground and sparks splashed. Roger's hands trembled. His expression is very complex, with guilt, pain, and sadness. Lu Feng took a deep breath of smoke and didn't speak for a moment. He just waited quietly, his eyes gazing into the distance. Roger needs some time to recover from the sadness of the white-headed person sending the black-headed person away. Ah! Suddenly, Roger looked up and burst into tears, with a hoarse roar echoing through the sky. Boom! Lu Feng's eyes stiffened as he felt the sturdy warship under his feet suddenly shake violently. The deck lifted and shattered one by one from Roger's feet, and even the hull let out an unbearable mournful cry. The sky has changed color at some point. Electric light flickers and the strong wind continues. The sea below also roared wildly, causing the entire warship to fall and break. Waves of almost visible impact rushed towards Lu Feng, almost causing him to lose his composure and stand unsteadily. He gritted his teeth tightly, instinctively gripping the mast with both hands, staring at the howling Roger. What a powerful and domineering aura. Roger's strength has not yet recovered, and he may not even have 1/3 of his heyday. But the domineering aura, which is innate and dominates the world, cannot be changed. In the situation of losing control of emotions, Lu Feng burst out in vain, making Lu Feng, who had not awakened his dominance, feel extremely uncomfortable for a while. That is a kind of crushing from the depths of the soul, an impact from the spiritual level. The strength of physical body in swordsmanship cannot be equated. Pirate King. Sure enough, it's domineering. That's enough. Why cry? Isn't it just that my son died? Don't forget my abilities. And you can go seek revenge, can't you? Lu Feng couldn't help but shout loudly. The crying came to an abrupt end. The strange phenomena around the world also suddenly disappeared. Roger looked at Lu Feng with tearful eyes and said eagerly. Can you resurrect Ace? Being stared at by the legendary Pirate King, whose old eyes were crying uncontrollably, Lu Feng felt a wave of discomfort. The 205 is exactly the same as Lufei. He said angrily. Nonsense. Not only your son, but also your wife, I can be resurrected. Let your family reunite then. Neat and tidy. The new book's 5th update has been uploaded, please ask for all support. I will work hard. Roger, do you know that your son calls someone else's dad? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Is the family neat and tidy? Roger muttered these 4 words for a moment, with tearful eyes as he looked at Lu Feng. Although this suggestion sounds quite tempting, he always feels that something is not quite right. Perhaps it was Lu Feng's slightly upturned lips and half-narrowed fox-like eyes that had successfully betrayed him. Roger suddenly gritted his teeth and said. Did you, this stinky kid, hide something? He grabbed Lu Feng's collar with one hand and made a fierce appearance. From the scenes on the execution stand and intercepting naval pursuit, Roger already knew that this bastard's mind was really ruthless. This guy looks fearless and acts casually, but in fact, everything he does is full of scheming, clearly after careful consideration. After resurrecting himself, he almost didn't hesitate to clear the scene and leave a place like Rogue Town, which was filled with naval intelligence networks, with his weak self. Faced with the pursuit of the Navy, simply land and sink the enemy's warship to avoid any trace leakage. Roger deeply understands how much risk Lu Feng carries when he chooses to resurrect himself at this time. He is not sure what kind of situation the Great Waterway has been like in the past 20 years. But as the Pirate King, once he reappears on this vast sea, it will inevitably mean various disputes. Especially the naval headquarters and the world government, which regard him as a mortal enemy, will relentlessly pursue him and Lu Feng. Otherwise, the public execution that shocked the world 22 years ago would have no meaning. The Pirate King must die in the hands of the Navy, and the ultimate evil must end in absolute justice, which is the best outcome. But now that I have reappeared in the eyes of the living, it is equivalent to a resounding slap to the justice of the world government and navy that have ruled the world for 800 years. And with his own Lu Feng, he will inevitably face various dangers. But he had no fear or timidity at all, instead he looked eager to try. If it weren't for such meticulous thinking, swift and decisive behavior, and such a free-spirited attitude, Roger probably wouldn't have foolishly set off with him and gone his separate ways long ago. You don't need to rush. Lu Feng shrugged casually and lifted his hand to knock Roger's hand off his collar. Too many things have happened in the past 22 years, let me take your time to explain. But before that, I advise you to take a cigarette and calm down, otherwise I'm afraid you'll hit me. He smiled faintly and then handed Roger another cigarette. This thing is piled up in the cabins of warships, almost the most stored thing besides alcohol, meat, and gunpowder. It seems that smoking is a good way to relieve stress in any world. Roger looked at the cigarette handed over by Lu Feng, shook his head, and then quickly ran into the cabin. In the blink of an eye, he ran back with a pot of wine. He sat on the deck, twisted open the wine jug, and looked up to drink. He has a clear appearance of drinking heavily. Lu Feng chuckled inwardly. Pirate King Roger, as rumored, is truly a super silly person. To be honest, whether it's his own resurrection or his son's death, this series of news is undoubtedly like a series of heavy bombs falling one after another. Even a neurotic iron like Roger would not be able to accept it for a while. Strong liquor entered Roger's stomach, and a hint of camel red appeared on his face. He asked in frustration. Tell me, now I can accept all the bad news. At the moment he finished speaking, he looked up and drank again. Lu Feng swallowed the clouds and exhaled mist, saying slowly. How much can you accept calling your own son, someone else's dad? Puff. The strong liquor shot and sprayed Lu Feng's face. Lu Feng wiped the wine on his face expressionlessly, only feeling a flash in front of him. Roger's figure had already arrived in front of him. A pair of red and bloodshot pupils stared at me intently, as if trying to devour me alive. What are you talking about, you bastard little devil? A hoarse voice popped out from between Roger's tightly bitten teeth. At this moment, Lu Feng seemed to see a strong green light emanating from the head of the Pirate King. He smiled and said, "You heard me right, your son Ace, calling someone else Dad is not you." Roger was taken aback. Suddenly, he slammed the wine jug in his hand heavily onto the deck and roared angrily as he looked up. "I fucked your grandmother's kapu. How dare I turn my back on me? I'm going to fight with you. I trusted you back then and entrusted my wife and son to you. You really took good care of them." He gritted his teeth and his veins jumped on his forehead. "Wait." The incompetent and furious uncle suddenly seemed to realize something and turned his head suddenly. "What did you just say? Is the family neat and tidy? My wife is also dead." Lu Feng covered his head with black lines. "This reflection arc is too long, isn't it? The network delay is 460. Oh my goodness, how exactly did these 205 become the Pirate King? So many ambitious conspirators have failed to accomplish things, yet they have been criticized by this idiot for doing them." Lu Feng felt that the group of Golden Lion was about to cry and faint in the toilet of the underwater prison. He let out a deep sigh. "That's right. But don't worry, the person who calls Dad to Ace is not Cap, but Whitebeard." Roger was taken aback. Immediately, he was once again furious in the sky. "I fucked your grandmother's Whitebeard. How dare I green my father? I'm going to fight with you." Seeking collection, flowers, and a 10-point review. The exposure of the new book is too low. Thank you. Also, let me briefly explain Roger's personality here. He is already quite silly and playful. Regarding the plot, if you have any suggestions, you can put them in the book review section, and I will carefully read them. Thank you. Chapter 007 Roger. Don't stop me, I want to talk to Bai Hu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Goddamn Whitebeard. Fortunately, I was still drinking with you under the cherry blossom tree and almost sworn brothers with you. I didn't expect you old bastard to do such a damn thing. Roger cried loudly, feeling disheartened, as he raised his hand to wipe the 2 lines of snot flowing from his nostrils. He took a deep breath and sucked in the remaining snot from his nostrils. He didn't know when he twisted open another pot of strong liquor and started drinking loudly. This eerie scene made Lu Feng feel a chill in his heart. This old bastard doesn't pay much attention to hygiene either. I clearly saw him rolling his throat while inhaling his nose. Can't it be swallowed directly? Right, the Pirate King of God TM, this ghostly appearance is no different from a foot-picking uncle wearing a mop. Roger was crying and howling on this side, drinking the liquor as water. After a moment of pleasure in his heart, Lu Feng shook his head and decided not to play tricks on this guy anymore. Heaven still shows pity. My wife and children are all gone, and my son is still calling his opponent Dad, which is quite impactful. Looking at the legendary Pirate King with a dying expression, Lu Feng flicked his cigarette ash and said calmly. Lao Luo, you don't have to worry. Your white beard is not green, and you don't have to cry here, Dad or Mom. It's too noisy. Roger was stunned, the wine jug parked in mid-air, and his snot hanging from his beard. The scene was comical. He didn't green me. Lu Feng nodded and said. Although you entrusted your wife and son to Cap for protection, Cap was not just covering the sky in the Navy. He squinted his eyes and took a puff of smoke. And not only the Navy, but also the world government is looking for your son. Your wife Portaka's dead, in order to prevent the world government from discovering that Ace is your son, used various methods and risked her life to greatly delay Ace's birth date. And for this reason, after giving birth to Ace, she passed away exhausted. Speaking of which, Lu Feng couldn't help but marvel at the fact that the name with D is indeed Nyo Pai. surprisingly able to hold a baby alive for 20 months. Ace is also a cow, surprisingly not suffocated to death. He instinctively looked up at Roger, who was crying uncontrollably. This family of 3 is all iron and silly. Roger fell silent. He raised his hand to wipe away his snot and tears, placed the wine jug beside him, and his expression gradually showed a hint of desolation. Lu Jiu. A gentle and beautiful shadow slowly emerged in his brain. He remembered that year. The young and gentle girl I met on Battleira Island after disbanding the pirate group. She is not the most beautiful girl I have ever seen, but the most considerate girl I have ever seen. That year, there was no fighting, no fighting. Only tranquility and comfort, the couple's mutual support. What a wonderful time. Roger murmured, with a rich smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. Suddenly. He suddenly lifted his head with a serious expression. Bang! A crisp sound made the warship's hull tremble suddenly. Lu Feng was startled, thinking that Roger was going to lose some nerve. He turned his eyes and was stunned. Roger was seen with his knees firmly stuck on the deck, his head pressed against the ground. Please. Lu Feng. Please help me revive my wife and son. As long as you fulfill my wish, I will do my best to help you achieve your goal. Lu Feng watched quietly as Roger suddenly knelt down, without speaking for a moment. Please. Roger said again. Bang. The sound of head pounding on the ground. Lu Feng shook his head and whispered. Lao Luo, didn't we mention this before? I will make your family neat and tidy. I promised you something and will never break my promise. His tone also became serious, full of sincerity. Lu Feng is actually very clear. For Roger at this moment, pursuing the sea and freedom is no longer his most important goal. What he wants to do, was already completed in that turbulent era more than 20 years ago. He has achieved a great feat that no one can achieve. But precisely because of this, he lost his lover and son. He even harmed the little girl Lu Jiu even though he knew she was terminally ill, leaving her orphaned and widowed mother in fear. Looking back now, he naturally felt very guilty and wanted to make amends. Really? Roger heard Lu Feng agree and looked up with gratitude on his face. Lu Feng nodded and immediately joked. But you need to be mentally prepared. When I resurrect Ace, he may not recognize your father. Roger gritted his teeth and became increasingly angry as he thought. If you don't recognize me, you'll hit him. And that old bastard with a white beard. How dare you prostitute my son for free? I'm going to hammer him to death. Where is that bastard now? I'm going to fuck him. Lu Feng said, the white beard has already died. Roger. What? 008 deserves it. You can't give birth to a son, white beard. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Did my beard die? Roger was inexplicably stunned, as if at a loss, sitting in place. Not moving at all. Lu Feng just wanted to raise his hand and pat his shoulder to comfort him. He was well aware of how deep the emotions between those influential figures were for the people of that vast era. Pirate King Gold, Roger, Whitebeard Edward Newgate, Navy hero Munch D. Cap, Flying Commander Golden Lion Ski, and the warring states of Buddha, in the tide swept by the times and the journey of sea domination. Although these people regarded each other as their mortal enemies, they engaged in countless battles and bloodshed with each other. But it is precisely this mutual affirmation of not knowing each other that confirms their profound, revolutionary, friendship. Being both enemies and friends is the best synonym for their relationship. It can be said without hesitation that these people understand their existence better than themselves. It is precisely for this reason that Roger boldly entrusted his wife and children to Cap, his old rival, before his death, without any doubt. And for Roger, the same goes for Whitebeard. In those days, these two guys were brothers. They even drank under the cherry tree and boasted. Roger still wanted to reveal to Whitebeard the location of Raffred at the end of the New World, but he was sneered at and refused by the latter. Now that the news of Whitebeard's death has spread, even Roger can't help but feel 1,000 emotions. Right. Lu Feng had just thought this way in his heart, but the next scene that appeared made him unable to resist collapsing. Did Bai Beard die? Roger, who had been motionless as if he had suffered a great blow, suddenly burst out laughing uncontrollably. Ha ha ha. Die beautifully. A wonderful death. Lu Feng's head raised a black line. This guy is too stingy, isn't he? As if he still didn't feel strong enough, Roger looked up and took a sip of liquor, then his hands danced in mid-air. The way he gritted his teeth, as if he was fighting against Whitebeard. Old bastard, make you pretend that you don't want to know the location of Raff Drew. I'm almost dying. I'm so kind-hearted. I'll tell you what you want, kid. You told me I only want my family. Bang. Roger punched heavily into the air, making a loud sonic boom. He looked like he had a sudden realization and realized it later, his teeth biting with a clattering sound. I've had this idea since then. You've been staring at my son for a long time. Lu Feng was stunned as he watched from the side. Brother, when you were chopping wine with someone, you hadn't sowed seeds for Lu Jiu yet. How could someone know that you, a short-lived ghost, had a queen? Roger ignored it and continued to mutter angrily. Whitebeard, you bastard want your son to be born on his own. Didn't Charlotte Lingling, that fat woman, have been staring at you for a long time back then? No, that chubby old lady wasn't a chubby old lady back then, she still looked quite hydrated. He shook his head and head. By the way. I understand now. Roger suddenly clenched his fist and hammered it into the palm of the other hand, as if a light bulb had been lit up with a ding sound next to his head. That guy with a white beard must not be able to give birth to a son on his own, so he recognizes his son all over the sea. Right. It must be like this. I'm so smart. Ha ha ha. As if shocked by his own cleverness, Roger burst into laughter. Lu Feng beside him had silently lit a cigarette again. Although it may sound like there's a lot of shocking gossip, it's really difficult to communicate with Lao Luo, who is mentally disabled. He now began to understand how helpless and desperate it was for the crew of the Straw Hat Regiment to carry Captain Luffy, who was 205. Lu Feng. After a low roar, Roger's figure reappeared in front of Lu Feng, staring at him with a burning gaze. This little gaze is too hot. Lu Feng sighed and said. Tell me, what are your requirements? Roger chuckled. Can you resurrect another person? Lu Feng puzzled and said. Who? Besides your son, there's also your wife and your parents. It seems like you don't have many relatives dead. Roger shook his head. No, I want you to help me revive Whitebeard. Aren't you able to gain a kind of power from resurrected people? He said stealthily. I'll tell you quietly, that bastard with white beard has the shock fruit, the strongest Superman type, and I don't know how strong he is. Anyway, he can't beat me, he's just cowhide. And his domineering aura. You haven't mastered the armed color domineering yet, have you? His dominance is not inferior to mine. His domineering and domineering demeanor is also good. Although he is slightly inferior to me, he can still crush this sea. How about it, do you want it? Just randomly select one ability, combined with my swordsmanship, it's not even easy to use Kapu. At the end, Roger even gave Lu Feng a squeeze. An old iron I know you. Looking at the Pirate King Roger in front of him with a face full of chicken thieves, Lu Feng, who had long been numb, brazenly spat smoke at his face. He looked through the world and said slowly. You're so angry that you want me to resurrect him, and then you can beat him up. 009 Earthquake shook the fruit, and the water flowed with a splash. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. This one. Roger seemed to have been told that his heart was very small, and blush turned red. Originally, with his shameless demeanor, he wouldn't even care about other people's teasing. But Lu Feng couldn't resist his sharp gaze, and he knew he had caused too much trouble, even holding the lives of his wife and son. Even Roger's thick skin was quite embarrassing. But this awkwardness was just a fleeting moment. Roger gritted his teeth and a flattering smile squeezed out of his face. Well, I was thinking about your big plan. Now you can't leave me behind, just wait for the world government and navy to want me. Plus the trouble I caused back then, you need enough combat power, right? He looked as if he had died after dedicating himself to Lu Feng, and coaxed him gently. As long as you revive that bastard with a white beard, maybe you can get his ability to shake the fruit. That's very impressive. Lu Feng smiled bitterly and said, how powerful is it? Roger was stunned for a moment, then drew a large circle with both hands in mid-air. It's just that powerful, very powerful, very powerful. Lu Feng covered his head. The adjective for this guy's emotions has come to an end. Draw a circle with both hands, is that all? Roger chuckled and said, it's hard to say when it comes to 1.1 combat. Back then, I could give that old boy a few moves. But if we fight in a group fight, that bastard is even more aggressive than me. Several fleets of the Golden Lion were sunk into the sea by him. After saying these things, he seemed to be afraid that Lu Feng might not be interested enough, so he waved his hands again to simulate the scene. One punch. Do you know how strong Lao Bai's punch was? The earthquake directly shattered the atmosphere and triggered a tsunami thousands of kilometers high. That water, that sea, that waterfall. It's simply flowing with a loud bang. What kind of naval fleet, what kind of demon-slaying order, there's nothing left. Back then, the Navy didn't dare to find trouble with Whitebeard and could only watch him recognize his son all over the sea. Although it's a bit worse than me, it's also a bit eye-catching. Roger was still chattering and dancing, trying to move Lu Feng, but he didn't notice that the corners of Lu Feng's mouth had started twitching at some point. What a language genius. The strongest earthquake fruit in the world with Whitebeard, 1,000-kilometer tsunami triggered with just one punch, he actually used that water splashing to describe it. God is so amazing. Would it be better not to use colors in this book? Alright, I'll consider the matter of the white beard, so don't get too excited for now. Lu Feng waved his hand helplessly and interrupted Roger's lust. Why? Roger asked in confusion. He doesn't understand. This is clearly a great good thing. Isn't Lu Feng rare in shaking fruits? It doesn't make sense. Although devil's fruit seemed like a bit of a chicken rib to their generation, it turned into a dry duck after eating, and since then, it has no connection with the sea, even taking a bath feels soft and fluffy all over. For devil fruit, no matter how strong, as the bathing king, no, Roger of the Pirate King never even glanced at it. Can a pirate king who cannot swim still be called a pirate king? Lu Feng explained. It's not because of your son. So Lu Feng briefly explained the beginning and end of the war to Roger, and he was stunned. Well, that's it. Whitebeard led his pirate team and, in order to save Ace, accompanied his entire life inside. But in the end, he didn't forget to help you promote it. One Piece is a real existence. Well, what are you doing? Lao Luo. Why did you cry again? As Lu Feng spoke, he saw Roger in front of him crying again, tears streaming down his face. Roger cried and said, "It's too tragic. Good brother Bai, I blamed you wrong. You helped me raise my son for so many years, and in the end, you ended up taking your own life. When you come back to life, I will definitely take it lightly and not slap you in the face." No, wow. Your face was shattered by that Navy magma kid. Crying, he even started to howl. Damn it, Cap. Are you just watching my son die like this? After all, it was the wrong person to pay. Lu Feng had black lines all over his head and silently extinguished his cigarette. He secretly swore that he would never chat with this bastard again in the future. It's so deadly. He took a deep breath. Then, facing the crying uncle's buttocks, a fierce kick. Dong! Roger flew out and crashed into the cabin, creating a human figure. Let's go. Lu Feng gritted his teeth and said. Roger stopped his tears and looked bewildered. Where are we going? Lu Fengqi cursed. Go resurrect your wife.